The Primals, also known as Icons, are magical beings in Final Fantasy XIV, worshipped by the beast races of Eorzea. Primals are constructs of concentrated ether made manifest by the will of the summoner in the form of legendary figures or mythical creatures. Due to the nature of their existence, a primal must consume ether from its surroundings, thus becoming a threat to the world. The Ascian race, possessing vast amounts of ether in their being, developed the art of summoning in ancient times when the fear they felt during the final days of their world caused them to unconsciously create monsters based on their imaginations. The process was perfected in the summonings of Zodiark and Hydaelyn, both being products of mass sacrifice. The pair's conflict sundered the world into the Source and the 13 Shards. Some of the few surviving Ascians now conduct umbral calamities to restore their world. They teach the way of summoning primals to beast races in the form of praying for the aid of their deity. Unlike the ancient Ascians, the new races that now inhabit the world have little ether, and the ritual requires an ample supply, the most convenient being crystals. While usually an embodiment of the summoner's desire, there are cases where the summoner transforms into a primal. A primal can also be summoned into a structure or be created in the image of their namesake. Once summoned, primals can temper other beings, instilling fanatical loyalty and creating a secure wellspring of faith. Usually this is an intentional process, but some primals, such as Ramuh, have shown distaste for it, implying it is a natural byproduct of their existence. While those gifted with the Echo are immune, their soul's ether may still be consumed by a nearby primal if they ever lose their mortal form. The Ascians also taught the ancient Elag the means to bind primals. The creation of primals has an effect on the mother crystal Hydaelyn, seemingly as part of the goal to revive her dark counterpart, Zodiark. The primals and the tools to summon them have proven useful in undoing an Ascian, as the supply of ether needed to summon a primal can, if focused, shatter an Ascian trapped in white Aeroside. Further, an Ascian soul can be consumed directly by a primal if its host's body is slain by one. Primals feed on ether and the soul is comprised of it. The term Elder Primal indicates those worshipped or summoned in older eras, often from cultures that no longer exist. For example, Bahamut was originally summoned in the Third Astral Era, whereas Shiva is a recent newborn primal. In the quest, Gods of Eld, Unukalhai mentions that the term the Elegans used for primals is icons. Given the time between the fall of Elag and the present, this would mean that the icons from the Elegan era are elder primals since they have been around for 5,000 years. This also implies that the Garleans took the Elag term since the term primal gives them a godly identification, and with Elegans and Garleans being atheists, they prefer the term icon to deny primals this hint of divinity. I will now be naming all the known primals at the time this video was released. Hydaelyn, the Mother Crystal, Elder Primal of Light and Goddess of the enlightened races of the world, as well as a faction of ancient Ascians. Zodiark, Elder Primal of Darkness and God of the Ascians. Ifrit, Lord of the Inferno, Primal of the Amalja. Titan, Lord of Crags, Primal of the Kobolds. Garuda, Lady of the Vortex, Primal of the Ixal. 7th Umbral Era. Leviathan, Lord of the World, Primal of Sahagin. Ramu, Lord of Levin, Primal of the Sylphs. Shiva, Lady of Frost, Primal of the Ishgardian heretics, in the image of Saint Shiva and summoned into Isael Dangolin. Enkidu, an inadvertently summoned primal created by Gilgamesh based on the memory of the original Enkidu. Ravana, Lord of the Hive, Primal of Gnad. Bismarck, Lord of the Mists, Primal of the Vanu Vanu. Knights of Round, primals created by the Archbishop Tordan VII, using the Ishgardians' fate in their country's founding legend in conjunction with one of Nidhogg's eyes. King Tordan is supported by his Knights 12, the primal forms of the Heavensward. Ereka, another primal from the Forbidden Land of Ereka storyline, sealed inside the Isle's castle, but appearing around the place as a masked man, it creates weapons and enthralls their wielders unless they possess the Echo. Odin, the dark divinity described as a roaming elder primal. The sword, Santetsuken, is the primal, while Odin is immortal, with a primal blade tempered and blessed with power. Art and Owain, the weapons Austral Dog and Moral Dog, are the real primals. Raiden, the weapon Shin Santetsuken, is the real primal. Absolute Virtue, the weapon Virtuous Lance, is the real primal. Proto-Ozma, one of the primals inside the Baldesion arsenal. Unlike the others, the entity is not an illusion from any Ereka weapon, but the real one. Peleus, another primal from an unknown era. Alexander, the Iron Colossus, primal of the Illuminati goblins. Sephiroth, the Fiend, is the first member of the Warring Triad and another primal of a tree-like race in Mercedia. Sophia, the Goddess, is the second member of the Warring Triad and another primal of a multitude of Mercedian races. Sophia is supported by the giant head, Barbello, though both are the same entity. Servan, the demon, is the third member of the Warring Triad and another primal of the Mercedian centaurs. Shinryu, the worm, a primal summoned by Ilbert, using the eyes of Nidhogg to lay waste to the Empire. It was stopped by Omega, ending up in the possession of Xenos. Susanoo, the Lord of Revel, the primal of the Kojin. Tsukuyomi, goddess of the moon and divinity of night, a minor primal of the Kojin summoned into Yutsuyu. Lakshmi, the Lady of Bliss, primal of the Ananta. Save the Queen, another primal based on the legendary Queen of Gunhildr of the Rodgar. Vilfor was a primal mentioned by Gagarua that hasn't appeared. In the end of an era cutscene, Louis Wallevieux summons the 12, appearing briefly during the Battle of Cardenal. In a realm report, Gaius Vine Balsar hints that these could have been primal versions of the 12, since they were summoned through Aether and Fate, just like the Beast tribes summoned their deities. Now I'll be talking about Eden's Recreations, who are primals created in the first of Idlene's Reflections. Unlike the ones from the source, these were created through memories from people by the Scene Eater Eden. It is unknown if these primals have the ability to enthrall people, though Shiva managed to control Rhine. Ifrit, Heritor of the Inferno, Novran's version of Lord of the Inferno, made by the Warrior of Light's memories. Garuda, Heritor of the Vortex, Novran Light's memories and summoned into Rhine. Cloud of Darkness, a primal recreated by the Warrior of Light's memories of the void sand of the same name. Shadowkeeper, a primal recreated by Eden based on the form used by Sylva to face Artbird and his group. Fatebreaker, an amalgamation of Rhine's memories of her various protectors, Vaudry, Ranjit, and Tancred. Now, let's talk about the Lunar Primals, who are created by Teleforoy inside Fendaniel's towers, using captive beastmen tempered into becoming devoted to the Garleans, forcing them through torture to create twisted versions of their deities, who exist to fight the Garl mold. Unlike proper primals, these lack the ability to enthrall people. These are Lunar Ifrit, a recreation of the Lord of the Inferno, forcibly summoned by the Teleforoy using captive Amalja. Lunar Bahamut, a recreation of the Red Worm summoned by Merisidian dragons enthralled by the Teleforoy. Lunar Odin, a recreation of the dark divinity summoned by Fendaniel. Lunar Ravana, a recreation of the Lord of the Hive summoned by Fendaniel. Now I'll be talking about the story of Final Fantasy XIV related to the Primals. Let's start with the version 1.0 of Final Fantasy XIV. A decade prior, the death of the dragon Midgar Swarm during the Battle of the Silver Tear Skies broke the seal he placed on the Silver Tear Lake to contain the Aether beneath it. The Ascian Paragons used these to teach the summoning ritual to the Eorzean beast tribes, with the resulting primals providing added motivation for the Garlean campaign. The Warrior of Light was made aware of the primals by the Alazan mage Louis Walleville, leader of the Circle of Knowing, whose investigation of Garlean legatus Nail Van Darnes revealed the primal's absorption of the realm's crystals threatens Eorzea. When Van Darnes enacted Operation Meteor, Dalamud's descent towards Eorzea weakened the primals as it absorbed their ether. During the 7th Umbral Calamity, Dalamud was revealed as Bahamut's prison. Louis Wa tried to use the power of the 12, Eorzea's guardian deities, to reseal Bahamut, but the attempt failed and Bahamut's rage was unleashed on the realm, triggering the 7th Umbral era. Now we'll get into the story of Final Fantasy XIV, A Realm Reborn. Tancred Waters asks the Warrior of Light to aid in solving a mystery regarding the disappearances in Camp Tribone. It turns out the Amalja have been kidnapping people to be offered to their primal Ifrit. During the operation to catch the Amalja red-handed, the Warrior of Light is betrayed and knocked unconscious to be turned into a follower of Ifrit. Through the protection of Hydaelyn, Ifrit's fire has no effect on the Warrior of Light, and he or she defeats him. The Maelstrom, the Grand Company of Limsalaminta, requests the Warrior of Light to slay Titan, who has been summoned by the kobolds near the city. Ishtola warns the Warrior of Light that Titan is much stronger than Ifrit, and that advice from the Company of Heroes, a brave band of men and women who have in the past killed him, would come in handy. After performing a series of tasks for the company members, the Warrior of Light receives their blessing and enters Titan's lair, where he or she defeats him. Later on, the Warrior of Light works with Sid and Ovinod to reach Garuda, where the Ixal have summoned her in Natalan. Garuda is much more powerful than the previous two primals, able to retain her physical form even after seemingly being beaten. She proclaims to tear down each city-state and leave behind the world where she is revered. Before she can attack the Warrior of Light, Gaius Vane Balzar arrives and mocks her, slaying the Ixal whose prayers were powering her. Garuda rips Ifrit and Titan into existence, from their followers whom the Ixal had captured and prepared to feed upon their Aether. The intervention of the Ultima weapon deployed by Vayne Belsar defeats Garuda and the other Primals. After the defeat of the Garlean Empire and the resurrected Primals, Elisée Leveilleux asks the Warrior of Light to investigate the dungeon beneath Castron Occidens called the Binding Coil of Bahamut to uncover the mystery behind Bahamut's sudden disappearance. They find fragments of Bahamut's body and at the center see its head held in place by technology from Dalamud. They see Louisoix and Nilvan Darnus alive, watching over Bahamut. Unable to do any more, the two take their leave. The Sahagin accumulate enough crystals to summon their primal Leviathan. After being warned by the Scions of the Seventh Dawn of the impending crisis, Admiral Merlwyb mobilizes the Maelstrom in launching a preemptive strike against Subsa's spawning grounds. They find a Sahagin priest calling for Leviathan who claims he will achieve eternal life through the Echo. He transfers his mind into the bodies of fellow Sahagin after being shot by the Admiral, but is absorbed by the awakened Leviathan. To take out the Lord of the World on the open seas before he can unleash a catastrophic tidal wave, a special barge called War Leader is created to enable the Warrior of Light to approach and defeat the Ocean Primal. The Dutch sylphs call forth Ramu, Lord of Leven. The sylphs of Little Solus had previously assured Ramu was of minimal concern, focused only with the protection of the forest, and it was believed that an influx of refugees from the unrest in Ul'dah pushed the Detched Ones' hands into summoning their primal. When confronted by the Scions, the Lord of Leven condemns the actions of man. Questioning the warrior's resolve to be the bearer of light, Ramu bids him or her to undertake his trial. Once defeated, he grants the Warrior of Light his blessing and leaves the physical world. The heretic Izael summons forth Saint Shiva as a primal. Being a user of the Echo, she can channel the primal into herself, becoming its avatar, a feat previously unknown. Shiva is defeated by the Warrior of Light and reverts to Izael. Frustrated, she condemns their involvement, insisting she's doing this for the sake of peace. Now I'll be talking about the story in the Heavensward expansion. The Knot, a tribe of anthropoid-like beastmen native to Dravania, became increasingly belligerent to both the dragons and hunters. The dragon Vidofnir reveals that the Knot had summoned the primal, and this has put the dragons on edge and thus denied the Warrior of Light, Izael, Ovinod, and the Stenian Wyrmblood access to the dragons Ravelgur for the time being. The Warrior of Light and Izael let themselves be captured as offerings to the primal Ravana. Realizing the primal is a war god, Izael offers a trial by combat, asking the Knot abandon their conquest if they defeat him. In the first round, Izael transforms into Shiva to duel Ravana, but is defeated. The Warrior of Light is up to next and defeats the primal, who honors his word. In the Sea of Clouds, the Vandu tribe of the Vanu have summoned Bismarck as a primal, an immense whale capable of devouring the floating islands, including the one that housed the key to Azizla. Sid concocts the idea of towing a floating island via the airship as bait and installing Ishgardian dragon killers to harpoon the whale, allowing the Warrior of Light to defeat the Lord of the Mists at the Limitless Blue. It is revealed that the Archbishop Torden VII and his elite knights, the Heavensward, used Ascian teachings to channel the legend of King Torden and his Knights 12 as a primal of the Church. At the floating continent of Azizla, Torden uses the power of Nidhogg Rock's right eye to transform into King Torden with the intent of eliminating all conflict in the world and ruling as a god king. As his first act, the Primal executes the Ascian Lahabrea and absorbs the Ascian's overlord, ethereal essence. The Knights of the Round are defeated by the Warrior of Light in the Singularity Reactor. Alexander is awoken in the Travenian hinterlands while the warring Triads steers from their slumber. Later, atop Balzar's wall, Ilbert uses the eyes of Nidhogg and the sacrifices of himself as well as his soldiers to summon Shinryu and bring calamity upon the Empire. But moments after its release, Shinryu is confronted by a recently activated Omega. The battle ends in a stalemate as the clashing energies result in a massive explosion that sends both flying away to parts unknown. Now I'll be going into the story part of the Stormblood expansion. Upon traveling to Tamamizu, the Warrior of Light learns of a creature akin to a primal called Susano, a kami worshipped by the Kojin of the Red. Unlike the primals of before, the Red Kojin do not plan to summon him. Instead, the Warrior of Light unwittingly summons Susano during a mission to draw a Red Kojin away from their Imperial allies. As the Yasakani no Magatama in the warrior's possession reacts to the two other treasures stored in a vault, materializing into the physical world without either prayer or crystal. Susano desires a contest of wills with the Warrior of Light. His wish is for battle independent of the Red Kojin. After freeing Doma and returning to Kirabania, the Warrior of Light learns of another primal from their Ananta allies called Shri Lakshmi, a deity worshipped by their beast tribe. She was summoned when Fordola murdered the daughter of Qualiana's leader, who had previously sided with the Empire in the hopes of being left alone. Driving the Imperials away with the might of their patron deity, they demanded that the Vira tribe of the Ananta come pay tribute to her. The Warrior of Light, the Leviu twins, and Liz head to the Qualiana's home to slay the Primal. They see Qualiana's brood mother distraught, as although her daughter had been revived, her soul was long ago lost to the Aether, leaving behind an unresponsive husk. Alisaie becomes incensed by the Primal's false promises and tries to convince Qualiana to renounce Lakshmi, but the mother's grief is too profound. The Primal floods the room with a wave of tempering flames, which the Warrior of Light blocks. Lakshmi warns them to leave them be. After defeating the Primal in her lair, the Qualiana's brood mother curses the Warrior of Light and Liz for taking away their only means of solace and tells them to leave for her to mourn. The Warrior of Light discovers the missing Shinryu with the royal menagerie of Alamigo. Xenos' Vigalvus' men had captured and imprisoned the beast while it was incapacitated from the battle with Omega. Because Shinryu was born of pure rage with no worshippers to guide its power towards a specific target or goal, it is akin to a mindless beast. Taking advantage of this, Xenos used the Resonant with his being to merge with Shinryu, becoming the Primal itself and its power at its disposal. past that would have otherwise ensnared them. With their combined power, the three slay the Primal, saving countless lives from a lifetime of servitude. During the prisoner exchange between Doma and Garlemald to solidify the united front against Primals, Asahi plans to disrupt the negotiations by forcing Yotsuyo to regain her memories, bringing her back as acting viceroy of Doma. The supply crates he dug from Yangxia were in fact crystals, and the mirror he had given her prior was used as a catalyst for the summoning of a kami. Feeding upon her sorrows, the crystals transform her into Tsukuyomi. Asahi uses Yotsuyo's summoning ritual to breach the agreement and orders his men to retreat. As the Warrior of Light battles her, they bear witness to Yotsuyo's innermost turmoil, being overwhelmed by specters of those who had wronged her, though a single light defends her in the form of a ghost of Kozetsu. Yotsuyo succumbs to her hate, but is defeated. Remnants of the Primal's power still linger in her transfigured state, but Asahi repeatedly shoots her. Yotsuyo uses her remaining power to skewer him with swords. Her vengeance sated, she dies peacefully, her lifeless body returning to its original state. And now finally I'll be going into the story part of the Shadowbringers expansion. In the absence of the Warrior of Light, who has journeyed to the first one of the shards of the source, Ifrit was again summoned. Rabban enlisted a contingent of summoners to combat the primal threat, with Arenvald and the newly conscripted Fordola as commanding officers leading the attack. Arenvald's echo and Fordola's resonant powers humanized them to the primal's influence, and their enhanced strength allowed them to fell the beast. In the first, the Warrior of Light, now taking the title of Warrior of Darkness, Rhine, Urianger, and Tancred discover a primordial being half buried in the empty, known as Eden, deducted to be the first Sin Eater and the one responsible for the flood of light that is eroding the first. They discover through some investigation of its inner workings that Eden does not erase Aether so much as it simply halts its flow. They devise a means to restore the flow through Eden's own power when Rhine takes control of it after the warrior defeats its prime form from within. Urianger speculates that to do so, aspects of the Aether must be introduced in mass quantities, with each element of the astral kind restoring nature piece by piece. The science solution is to use Eden and the warrior's memories to evoke primals from the source and defeat them so that their dispersed Aether would restore an aspect of the first. Focusing on water first, the warrior's thoughts turn to Leviathan. When confronted, its form appears different, now having two heads. After defeating it, Urianger speculates that its altered form was due to warrior's hazy memory of having fought the primal so long ago, and may have confused its form with how it was originally fought, in addition to other water-aspected primals encountered during their travels. Flowing water returns to the empty, and they next focus on Earth. Titan springs to mind, and his form is also significantly altered, now appearing as a less hefty humanoid covered in large iron tires that it rides upon. With its defeat, natural soil returns to the world. Though their successful efforts seem localized, Urianger theorizes that the restored Aether may have reappeared in focal points across the world. Rhine, exhausted from the summonings and having spent an extended amount of time in the empty, regroups with her friends in Norvrand. Upon returning to the empty with the newly awakened Gaia from an earlier excursion, Urianger proposes to focus on the aspect of thunder, this time summoning Ramu. The warrior's memories summon a centaur, the upper half being a slightly younger of the Ixion from Kiribania. After defeating him, the crystal outside changes color, no outward changes seem apparent. Urianger notices that the very air is now less stifling, without winds to carry storms and no fire to evaporate them. The thunder aspect can't be fully realized. Gaia and Rhine propose to introduce fire and wind simultaneously, requiring the warrior to fight two primals at the same time. Summoning Ifrit and Garuda, the latter is more or less the same as her original form, but Ifrit is more humanoid in appearance. The two merge to form a new entity called Raktapaska, but are yet destroyed, and their combined aether changes the crystal to a red and green bicolored palette, returning rain to the empty. With the group's mission nearly complete, they only need to bring forth the aspect of ice. They are delayed when Gaia's fairy voice introduces her mind and manifests in physical form as the idol of darkness. After destroying the thread and freeing her, the group continues with their mission. Rhine summons Aether into her own being to transform into Shiva, just as Hazael once did. Despite Urianger and Tancred's subjections, Rhine insists on doing this to prove herself strong enough, should Eden run amok while she's trying to control it. Shiva manifests in a new form and takes over Rhine, attacking the warrior. Rhine's powers as the Oracle of Light further transformed Shiva by turning her into a robed figure resembling Heidelin's depiction in the stone walls of Gitana Ravel. Shiva's powers grow unstable and she blasts herself and the warrior in an explosion of light-aspected ice, freezing them both solid. Gaia emerges from a dark portal and summons a hammer of darkness to shatter most of the ice, freeing the warrior. Shiva's powers grows unstable and she blasts herself and the warrior in an explosion of light-aspected ice, freezing them both solid. Gaia emerges from a dark portal and summons a hammer of darkness to shatter most of the ice, freeing the warrior. With their combined strength, they destroy Shiva's form, freeing Rhine from her influence. They celebrate their victory, and with the ice element, greenery returns to the land, completing their mission. Though the planet's rejuvenation could take decades, the undisturbed channeling of Eden's massive power should ensure that all is well in the foreseeable future. While searching for Ishtola in Emetsalk's recreation of Amarot, the warrior comes across Elidibus, whom Ishtola deduces as a fragment of the heart of Zodiark, and thus a primal fostering the faith in the legends of the warrior of light across the first to strengthen himself. When the warrior confronts Elidibus at the top of the Crystal Tower, Elidibus can barely remember his people, his friends, or the reason behind his actions. Undeterred, he takes on the form of the first warrior of light of legend, but the warrior of darkness defeats him with the aid of Azem's memory crystal given to them by Hitlodeus, as well as the soul of Emetsalk. Having been stripped of his power, the warrior gives Elidibus the memory crystals of Convocation of 14, allowing him to regain his long-lost memories before fading away. Following the Science return to the source, the warrior, Rhine, and Gaia return to the empty to discover that the elements are still aspected towards light. Gaia suggests returning darkness to balance out the light and summons a primal version of the Cloud of Darkness. In doing so, they inadvertently free the Ascian Mitron, Eden's true form. Mitron had implanted the idea of restoring darkness in Gaia's mind and invites her to Eden to explain their relationship. Mitron uses Eden's power to recreate the Shadowkeeper that Artbird and his friends defeated long ago, to reawaken Gaia's memories as his partner Lokriv. When that fails, he forcibly fuses with Gaia to create an Ascian Prime and creates a primal amalgamation of Rhine's greatest hopes and fears, Vautry, Tancred, Ranjit, and the Sin Eaters. After the warrior Primus is defeated and Gaia separated from Mitron, whilst the area around the Eden transforms into a lush and verdant paradise, with the colossal Sea Eater itself encased in a giant tree. Ryan and Gaia predict that the life will spread to the rest of the empty in time. In the southern Elzabard, the warrior assists the Bozjan resistance in retaking their homeland from the forged Imperial Legion by taking Castrum Lacus Victory in the Bozjan southern front. Unbeknownst to the resistance, the Force placed a spy, Misija, within their ranks. They find the ancestral weapon of Gunhildr's, Save the Queen, and it gives it to Misija, who intends to harness the blade's power. Misija kidnaps Mikoto Jinba, intending to use her to enter the blade's memories as well as become resonant. When the resistance retakes Castrum Lacus Litori, Misija confronts them and forces the warrior and Mikoto to enter the Save the Queen's memories. She alters them and summons her ancestor as a primal, and tempers the new generation of Gunhildr's blades. Bwagi and Zepanka arrives before the rest can be enslaved and shoots Misija in the shoulder, giving them time to escape. With the resistance routed and the Force forces bolstered by Misija and the Elder Primal, despite their lack of movement due to the lack of resources from Garlemald, both are left at an easy stalemate. Mikoto reveals that Save the Queen was crafted from Arsite created by Ultima, the High Seraph, meaning that it cannot be sustained with a substantial cache of crystals. Pursuing Misija